570-971. Call the office at 572-0383 or 572-0215. Rev-Up St. Lucia, the alpha of radio.
It's now time for Meet the Opposition, hosted by Leonard Spider Mantut. Mr. Mantut, welcome once again.
Yes, special good morning to you, Andre, and good morning to all our viewers and listeners, whether in St. Lucia, in the region, or in the diaspora. Let me say welcome to another episode of Meet the Opposition. And as you know, the program that is transitioning into Meet the Government in Waiting. I want to first apologize because, boy, the traffic was terrible on the road this morning.
It's been that way for weeks.
Well, yeah, and particularly so, I sat in the Bois area for such a long time, and as a result of this, I arrived here late. So let me just remind the United Workers' Party that when they get into office, that project that was started with the four lanes going into Grosile in the Rodney Bay area has to be immediately addressed to ease that burden on commuters, and to stop wasting productive time in St. Lucia so that, we can get some reprieve from that situation. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, today we do not have a guest, so we're going to have wide-ranging discussions on a number of current pertinent subjects. And let me just give you an idea. We're going to talk about the Rover Gate scandal judgment that was made recently on that case. We are going to talk about the conflict between Stephenson King and Prime Minister Philip J. Pierre on whether CDCs in La Clery going to be investment center or whether it's going to remain for housing or whatever the case might be. We are also going to touch a little on some of the comments that Stephenson King has made of late. One of which, he touched on me, and these days I'm very irritable. Once you attack me, I react. So I will be responding to that. And let me just say too that we're going to touch on another current issue, that is the emergence of a new independent candidate in the Castries Central constituency. Very interesting development. And I also want to have a little word on this never-ending distortion, dishonest statement about the distress fund. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let us get straight into it. And of course, as usual, as always, I have my devil's advocate here, Andre, who will be stopping me at any point he wishes to clarify and so on. And that is very important because I'm sure very often Andre is doing it for your sake if he thinks I'm not clear on something, or he thinks I left out something, or he thinks something needs to be elaborated upon. Feel free, Andre, as usual, as always.
That's right.
So, what is called the Rovergate scandal, that is the case involving Ernest Hilaire bringing a Range Rover into St. Lucia, and there were allegations that was done inappropriately because it was said that while as a High Commissioner, as an ambassador, he's entitled to duty-free concessions, it was said, first of all, that he had already brought one vehicle into St. Lucia and benefited from the duty-free concession. And secondly, to acquire that other vehicle, he did it on the false pretense by first buying the vehicle and registering it in the name of the High Commission in London, exporting it to St. Lucia in the name of the government of St. Lucia, and then when he got to St. Lucia, he claimed that it was his vehicle. So there was this, scandal about this whole thing, and the case was brought against him. So, but let me just go into it, chronologically, so that our listeners and viewers who are not familiar with the issue can, get a better idea, a clearer picture of what actually transpired. So, first of all, I think before I do that, I want to read to you a press release from the United Workers' Party on the issue. And let's just hear what the United Workers' Party has to say about the matter, and then we will discuss the matter, in a little more detail. And later on, we'll be opening the line so that you too can weigh in and have your say on the issue. So, we're talking about the Rovergate scandal. So, the United Workers' Party, notes the ruling of the Caribbean Court of Justice, the CCJ, in the matter of the Controller of Customs withdrawing the case involving Ernest Hilaire, accused of bringing in a Range Rover to St. Lucia from the United Kingdom illegally. This wasn't a full hearing on the facts. It was only about whether the case could move forward. When a court refuses to leave, now let me just stop and explain that. When they say this was not a hearing on the facts, it was not Ernest Hiller going to court to prove whether or not the allegation was true. It was a hearing to determine whether the case should go through or not. That is because the case was withdrawn, and the leader of the opposition and the United Workers' Party felt that there was no justification in withdrawing the case, and they were asking that the case be reinstated. And the court had to rule as to whether the case should go forward or should remain withdrawn. So
and by the way, forward to
move forward into the court, like go ahead with it in the court, to be heard in the court.
Because it was heard by the CCJ.
No, well, what was heard by the CCJ is whether or not they should go ahead with the case.
Right.
Right.
So in other words, the CCJ would have ruled whether they should go back to the lower court, no?
No, well, it would have to go back to the lower court if they had agreed to hear the case, because the case really was against Ernest Hiller, bringing in this vehicle there allegedly under shady circumstances, suspicious circumstances. That case has never been heard. The case that was heard, even at the local court, the Court of Appeal and the CCJ, was whether or not the case should have been withdrawn. Because the case was withdrawn, so that case has never been heard. And the CCJ upheld the withdrawal. But when I go through this letter and then we start the discussion, I think the picture will become clearer. Okay? So while the court focused narrowly on whether the case was legally reviewable, the outcome represents a deeper setback for transparency and public trust. The courts did not examine the underlying facts of the matter or the circumstances that led to the decision to discontinue the prosecution. At its core, Rovergate was about how a luxury vehicle entered the country under the name of the state, then was later transferred into Hiller's personal ownership, a process that raised serious questions about duty exemptions, import procedures, and whether privilege whether privilege was abused. Customs officers once brought formal charges only for those charges to be quietly withdrawn. No full explanation was given, and no independent review was allowed to test the facts. What should have been an opportunity for transparency instead became an exercise in avoidance. No ordinary St. Lucian could expect such leniency or quiet exemptions. If this had involved anyone else, the process would have been swift and unforgiving. The message this sends is that rules bend for the powerful, while everyone else is expected to comply. For the UWP, this outcome reinforces a troubling reality when those in positions of authority can withdraw cases involving public interest without transparency or oversight, and public trust is eroded. Accountability must not depend on who holds power. When individuals in positions of authority are allowed to make discretionary decisions that impact taxpayers without consequence, public confidence in the system is undermined. Accountability is the cornerstone of democracy, and the people of St. Lucia deserve better. The United Workers' Party remains resolute in its mission to defend transparency and integrity in public life. We will continue to hold this government accountable and push for stronger checks and balances to ensure that such situations can never occur again. This is not the end of our pursuit of better governance. It is a reminder of how fragile accountability becomes when power goes unchecked, and why the United Workers' Party will always stand on the side of the people. So that was a press release from the United Workers' Party on the issue. Now I want to go into this issue now and to discuss it in more detail. So let us delve into the matter and bring out the facts surrounding this whole situation. So again, since the ruling of the CCJ, we have heard the SLP come out claiming that Ernest Hiller was vindicated. That is the statement that I have heard so far from the SLP, that Ernest Hiller was vindicated. Now, let us first examine this vindication story. Okay? The question is, Ernest was vindicated from what? Okay. How was Ernest vindicated? The matter was not tried, so how was he possibly vindicated? Because, before I go further, for the benefit of my listeners, Andre, let me just read what I have here, because I looked up the meaning of the word vindication. And what does vindication mean? Vindication means the action of clearing someone of blame or suspicion. Or it can also mean proof that someone or something is right, reasonable, or justified. That is what vindication means. Now, is the Labour Party telling us that Ernest Healy, because of that court ruling, was cleared of any blame or suspicion in the matter that he was accused of? I don't think so. Because the CCJ ruling had nothing to do with proving that Ernest Healy did not do what he was accused of doing. That is, bringing a Range Rover, which is a luxury vehicle, into St. Lucia under the name of the state, and then transferring the ownership into his own name as his personal vehicle. Of course, that was all done to circumvent the payment of the various tax duties and so on. So this gave rise to some questions being asked about whether he was entitled to the vehicle, okay, whether duty exemptions were paid, or whether there was, in fact, he was also entitled to duty exemptions, and whether import procedures were violated. Now, Andre, listeners, Peter Chico, the same Peter Chico who is the United Workers' Party candidate for Castries South East, was at the time the acting controller of customs. For those of you not familiar with the customs situation, the controller of customs is the head of customs, the chief, the boss of customs. Peter Chico was that person. So Peter Chico certainly, while acting controller of customs, thought that there were irregularities and breaches and began legal proceedings against Ernest Healy. So Peter Chico spearheaded the bringing of that matter to the court. So Ernest Healy was charged. So then came the general elections while all of this was going on, because Andre, just like I do, when we talk about court, that's not a today for tomorrow business. So in the process, there was general elections, and then came the SLP into office with Ernest Healy as one of the ministers in the SLP administration. That government, the St. Lucia Labour Party government that included Ernest Healy, swiftly proceeded to remove Chico as the head of customs, as the customs controller, and appointed another gentleman called Sherman Emmanuel, who is currently the head of customs. What followed immediately was that Sherman Emmanuel withdrew the case against Ernest Healy, okay, to prove that the vehicle was his, and if so, why was it in the name of the state? And in fact, whether or not Ernest Healy used his position of power to breach the customs procedures in getting exemptions and gaining favors that he was not entitled to. So that is what the case was pursuing, but Sherman, becoming the new controller of customs, withdraw the case. Andre, that move, you must admit, is very suspicious and questionable. All right? And I say so because I'm sure a lot of people were asking and wondering, was Sherman Emmanuel brought in to circumvent justice? Okay. At the end of the day, in return for his promotion, was it a deal that he will become the customs controller and he was expected or asked to withdraw the case? These are looming questions that we must ask ourselves. Okay. Was Chico gotten rid of because he was an obstruction and was not willing to play ball? That is another question we must ask. So the opposition, recognizing this, gave this grave travesty and abuse of power, they challenge the situation by taking the matter to court. So, Andre, this is a situation where were you talking about sports? In sports they would call that, what would they call that in sports? Let me see. They would call that match fixing, Andre. Match fixing, where you you plan everything in favor of one side. But what was done here, we believe, was a travesty of justice, because at the end of the day, if there is a reason for suspicion, if there are reasons for questions to be raised, and the matter is taken to the court, if you're innocent, you prove your innocence. That erases the questions. If you're guilty, you're found guilty, that confirms what is in people's mind. But that process was never allowed, because the controller of customs who was pursuing the matter was removed, and Sherman Emmanuel was brought so that the case could be dropped, and so that Ernest Hiller could be, quote-unquote, exonerated. So, Alan Chasney, the leader of the opposition, spearheaded a challenge in the courts, requesting that the court review the decision of the newly appointed Controller of Customs, Sherman Emmanuel. Okay? Controller of Customs to withdraw the case against Hiller. Of course, we're asking ourselves whether there was merit and whether that was a political move in exchange for promotion. So to have the case allowed to be brought forward in the courts would have proved, or would have proven, or given an opportunity for the facts of the case to be tested and for the public to find out whether or not Ernest Hiller is in fact guilty, as the preponderance of evidence, Andre, seemed to show. Because the opposition is just simply making allegations or accusations. Do not forget that Alan Chasney and the United Workers' Party were in government at the time that matter was in the air, and they had access to the documents. So there are in fact documents supporting, substantiating, and verifying the claims that were made against Ernest Hiller. But of course, you cannot be, chief judge and jury on matters of that nature. It has to go to the court. But the court was circumvented, and the matter was never allowed to see the light of day in the court. Having done that, like I said, the leader of the opposition challenged that move on the part of the Controller of Customs and went to the court to ask the court, to uphold the case that was brought against Ernest Hiller and not allow that kind of travesty, that kind of circumvention of justice that was taking place. The court felt that just as the Controller of Customs had the right to proceed with charging Ernest Hiller, taking him to court to answer the charges, so too does the Controller of Customs have the prerogative to withdraw the matter and stop the proceedings if he so desired or so decides for whatever reasons. That was the position of the court. In other words, let me see if I can, find a good analogy. If, for example, a woman brings a case against a guy for abuse, for rape, for whatever it is, she has a right to withdraw and stop the case at any time. And the question is, should she have a right to do that? And that was what it was about. Whether the so the court is saying, well, just as the Controller of Customs deemed that was a matter to take to the court and had a right to take it to the court, he also has that right to decide, well, look, he has changed his mind and withdraw it. Except for the fact that it was one Controller of Customs who took it to the court, and a newly appointed Controller of Customs, first order of business for him was to withdraw that matter from the court. So I am asking the question now, was Chico fired for the purpose of circumventing, well, he wasn't fired, he was removed in his position for the sole purpose of circumventing justice, and was Sherman Emmanuel brought in to ensure that justice would not be served? And when I say justice, I'm not saying that Ernest Hiller would be found guilty or not, but justice in my mind is allowing the matter to be ventilated in the court, for the court to make a determination and a judgment on the issue to say whether or not Ernest was in fact guilty. But all those extensive, elaborate moves, you can understand, because there's a lot at stake. Because with a conviction, Andre, you cannot hold public office. So, I am not surprised that the Labour Party, true to form, went out of their way, overboard, to squash that matter. And of course, unfortunately, the court upheld that decision. So I'm sure it is clear to all of us what the reason for the withdrawal of the case is. I'm sure it is clear. You have your own opinion. I have my own opinion. I doubt very much that yours is different to mine. Because this means that the suspicion, the allegations, and the unanswered questions hovering around Ernest Hiller remains. He has not been exonerated. He has not been cleared. The matter remains. Okay? And there's evidence that the United Workers' Party, the opposition, has pointed to that substantiates the fact that there was something untoward that was done. So the facts have still not been tested by the courts, and Ernest Hiller has not been exonerated from the charges against him. That is the situation as it stands now. So, what has Ernest Hiller been vindicated from? Because the SLP is claiming that Ernest Hiller, and Ernest Hiller himself is claiming that he has been vindicated. What has Ernest Hiller been vindicated from? Who cleared Ernest Hiller from any blame? No court has done that. Okay? Now, Ernest Hiller has not been cleared from blame or suspicion. Ernest Hiller still remains under a cloud of suspicion and questionable deeds. That continues to hover over the head and around Ernest Hiller. Just like the questions and suspicions, and I'm saying, what I'm saying here now, that remains as a questionable, suspicious matter that continues to hover around him, over his head, just like the questions and suspicions of mismanaging his CIP portfolio, where there are many questions that are unanswered, just like being accused of having assaulted a female worker. Okay? Those allegations, those accusations, those suspicions, those questions remain hovering around Ernest Hiller. Now, you would think an honorable person with integrity would be eager, okay, would be quick to ensure that they do everything that they could to exonerate themselves and to clear their names. I would have been happy to have the matter ventilated in the court so that I can have an opportunity to clear my name if I am not guilty. At every count, you find those people are avoiding facing the reality, refusing to come out straight and be accountable and to take responsibility for their actions. That, ladies and gentlemen, they are using their high office to do. That they are able to do because they are in power. But they will not be in power forever. I am saying that you, the people of St. Lucia, you, the citizens, have a say in the matter. At the end of the day, the courts took its decision. The government played its role with its gimmicks. But you, at the end of the day, are the final arbiter as to whether or not they are going to pay. And so come day of election, you can pass judgment on all of those deeds that they are refusing to answer to you for. You can pass judgment on them and let them know that as your servants, as the people who work for you, you have jurisdiction over them and you can decide and determine their fate. And that I'm hoping that St. Lucians will do in an emphatic manner come the next general election.
So Mr. Mantul,
yes.
I mean, I don't understand the full story, right? As when you came in this morning, I said to you, hopefully you can, go over this case and give us the history, etc., etc. I'm trying to understand, Dr. Hiller. The fact that the court is the one who has the final say, they decide. Mm-hmm. I don't get the impression that Dr. Hiller tried to stop the process. It is the court that said, well, listen,
hold on.
We can't take this any further.
No, I didn't say that. It is Dr. Hiller and the St. Lucia Labour Party who removed the controller who was taking the matter to the court.
Yes.
Appointed a new controller who my suspicion is went into a deal with them, that is my suspicion, in exchange for his promotion, that he, as controller of customs, he has that right to withdraw the case so that the matter will not see the light of day in court. That is what I believe happened. And if that is not so, why didn't they allow the matter to go to the court? What are you afraid of? What are you afraid of?
But didn't the leader of the opposition take it to court?
Let me tell you what he took to court. That's what I'm trying to explain. He didn't take the matter of Ernest Hiller bringing a jeep in St. Lucia under suspicious, questionable circumstances to court. What he took to court is the decision of the newly appointed controller of customs to withdraw the case. Are we saying, why did you withdraw the case?
Now, when I read the story this morning, it mentioned the DPP. What role did the DPP play in this?
Well, the DPP didn't play any role in that. As a matter of fact, the United Workers' Party suggesting that's one of the things that should have been done, that the matter should have been sent to the DPP, and that the controller of customs do not unilaterally decide that the matter would be withdrawn. Because at the end of the day, normally when you withdraw a matter, Andres, because when you realize, boy, there's not sufficient evidence to stand in court and all of that, there is evidence. There is evidence, and I am confident if that matter had reached the courts, that a decision would be made by the courts that would not be in Ernest Hiller's favor. That is why they went at length, to the extent that they did, to ensure that that matter did not reach the court. That is what I'm saying this morning. Okay? And I'm saying to you, Andre, if you are not guilty, you have an opportunity to prove your innocence. Why didn't you take it?
Okay. Let's just look at the flip side.
Right.
If Mr. Chico was still the controller of customs, how do you think things would play out?
The matter would go to the court, and by now, hopefully, because it's a couple of years already, by now, hopefully, we would know whether or not Ernest Hiller is in fact guilty. If he wasn't guilty, he'd be vindicated, like they're claiming. If he was guilty, then he'd be proven to be someone who breaks the law. I don't want to say a criminal, that's what he would be. He would have a conviction against him, and he would have to demit office. That's what would happen. That's what would happen. That's how serious it is.
So you're saying the current controller didn't take this matter to court?
You know that he didn't take it. He withdrew it from the court.
Right.
It was in court. He withdrew it from the court. Why?
So why? So why then wouldn't the court now demand that the case be heard?
That's what we were hoping that the court would do. But at the end of the day, just like the lady who say, well, her boyfriend beat her, that's assaulted her, that's a criminal offense. But she took the matter to court, and if the boyfriend come and bring her a hamper or whatever it is, and she decide to withdraw the case, she's not going forward with it anymore. What they're saying there in that case, that she has a right to withdraw if she wants to.
Let me read what I what I read this morning. And that's why I'm a little confused.
Right.
Now, this is the Caribbean Court of Justice, right? In its ruling, the CCJ unanimously affirmed the judgments of the lower courts. Okay, unanimously affirmed the judgments of the lower courts. So the lower courts ruled on this matter, and the CCJ is saying, well, listen, we affirm
let's
that.
Let's be clear what the lower courts ruled on. The lower courts ruled on their opinion that Sherman Emmanuel had a right to withdraw the case that was brought by Peter Chico. The case that should have been heard about Ernest Hiller was withdrawn. And when that was done, the leader of the opposition, United Workers' Party, took the matter to the court to say, well, how could you withdraw the case? Does Sherman have a right to withdraw the case? The court said yes. That is what happened. And that is the ruling that was done at the lower court. They said he had a right, just like the lady whose husband beat her. Now, at the end of the day, let me just say something to you. If the husband, in fact, assaulted the lady, beat her up, and she's black and blue, the fact that the court says she has a right to withdraw the case doesn't mean he didn't commit an offense, didn't commit a crime.
Yes, I understand that.
It's just that he was never brought to court to be found guilty. You know,
but that is
the case. That's what happened there.
But that's your analogy.
Well, it is. But you can find a better one, and you can find a better one if you wish.
Let me just read on, okay? All right. So in its ruling, the CCJ unanimously affirmed the judgments of the lower courts, criticizing both the logic and substance of Mr. Shastney's appeal.
Right.
So why are they doing that? Why are they criticizing, say, the logic and substance of Mr. Shastney's appeal?
Mr. Shastney is arguing that, look, there's enough evidence to take the matter to court, and he should not have, the new controller should not have the jurisdiction and the power to withdraw the matter when it was brought by a previous one. They're saying that logic is, according to the court, that logic is flawed, that just like the previous controller decided to bring it to the court, this current controller has a right to withdraw it if it wishes. That's basically what it is.
Okay.
That's basically what it is.
All right. The court noted that the relief sought by the appellant was inconsistent with his own argument that the DPP, not the controller, had taken over the prosecution.
Okay. So what the leader of the opposition was saying, look, that matter should be brought to the DPP, and the DPP should have been the one to make that decision as to whether the matter should proceed or not. The controller of customs took the decision. The court is saying the controller of customs has the right to take that decision. That's what happened there.
Okay.
So
the matter was really about, as you said there, the right of the current controller to withdraw the case.
Yeah.
Okay.
And while it may be, he may be.
So in other words,
right,
the courts can't do anything by virtue of the fact that it was withdrawn,
unless the controller of customs decide to reinstate the case. And this is right. So all I'm saying to you, Andre, is while it is his right to withdraw the case, and he did, why did he do so? That's the question. Because you were brought into the hatchet job. Andre.
Or maybe he thought there was nothing. There was nothing there.
You must thought there was nothing. Yeah, you come in, they bring you in for you to think that there was nothing. The first order of business is for you to withdraw that case. Andre, the suspicion is rife, and in my mind, when things like that happen, it is cover-up. That's the name they call it, cover-up. And in my books, and I'm sure in the public opinion, Ernest Hiller, you have done yourself no good. Okay, you have done yourself no good. You had an opportunity, if you genuinely believe you're innocent, you had an opportunity to go to the courts to do it. Because let me just say to you, the same people who appointed Sherman Emmanuel could have instructed him to continue to go ahead with the case. Okay?
And why should Dr. Hiller try to proceed with the matter? It's the customs controller.
Well, I don't know about Hiller. I'll tell you why I would. If such serious allegations are being made about me, and I believe that they are unsubstantiated, they have no foundation, that they are untrue, I would be happy to go to the courts, clear my name, have you pay my legal costs, and come out of there smelling like a rose, proving to the general public that I am free of any breach or any illegality.
That's you.
That's me. That's what I would have done. That's what an honorable person does. Yeah. You can question that one, Andre. That's what an honorable person should have done. Because at the end of the day, I've been investigated in government, I've been in government before and I've been investigated. When they launch an investigation into the park at Pigeon Point, where those vendors are now between Pigeon Point and Sanders and so on, I said, go right ahead. I called for a release of the report of the investigation, Andre. Why? Because I want to clear my name. They refused to release it. Now, you know what that tells the public? The public is not stupid, Andre. The fact that you refuse to release it tells the public that your allegations and accusations were without foundation, without basis. Okay? So, that exonerates me. Just like the fact that you refuse to face the court in the Ernest Hiller case, it says something to the general public as well. What are you running away from? What are you afraid of? Okay? So let me tell you something. Things are proven one way or the other, So the fact that it wasn't done in the court in the official, approved manner doesn't mean that while justice may have been denied, doesn't mean in the minds of the people they do not know the difference between right and wrong. And that is what is important at the end of the day. And the judge's decision is based perhaps on the regulations, on the laws, and the technicalities.
Yeah, and what you're saying is that the control of customs is the one who has the power to remove it, to withdraw it.
That's right.
And Mr. Shastney's case was that he shouldn't have done it.
Right.
Yeah?
Mr. Shastney is claiming that he should not have withdrawn the case. Mr. Shastney was anxious to see that case go forward.
Yes. So the courts are saying, well, by virtue of the fact that the controller has that power.
There's nothing wrong with him withdrawing the case.
Right, okay. We got that.
Yes. Okay, so I just wanted to make that clear. So let's not talk about vindication. Nobody was vindicated. Okay? Nobody was vindicated. Ernest Hiller certainly was not vindicated. As a matter of fact, that raises the suspicion a few notches higher. the fact that you're running away from the court, that raises the suspicion of desire. Because, many guilty people get away on technicalities where the world know they are guilty, Andre.
So if your party wins the next general elections, do you think that they will go after this case?
Well, I cannot say that. I mean, it is for the incoming, or if there is another controller of customs, it is for him to make that determination, So, I don't know. But I think what the leader of the opposition did served a purpose, because it brought to light the character of the government that is supposed to be serving us. It does. It exposes the extent to which they would go to abuse their authority and their power, to protect themselves, and to abuse the privileges that they have. That is what it does. Because this is the same Ernest Hiller who refused to account to us on the CIP. Okay, when asked how many passports, can you imagine a straightforward question like this? How many of our passports? I say our, Andre. I want to stress our passports have you sold?
And by the way, on Power Politic, they were arguing and saying that it's not passports, you don't sell passports, you issue passports.
Well, technicality, Andre.
No, but it's important because when people hear about sold, see,
Andre, it sounds vulgar, okay? It sounds like prostitution. Andre, I am not in your diplomacy business, Andre. Okay? That is what we are doing, selling passports. You give people our passports in exchange for money. Call it what you want.
So when I go, I apply for my passport.
Yeah.
Okay? Are they selling me a passport?
Yeah.
They're selling me a passport?
You don't pay for it, Andre?
Yes, I'm paid for the application and so on.
All right.
But the government doesn't sell me a passport.
Okay, so
so why do we Andre, say sell for
Andre,
foreigner?
I'm not getting into the technicality and nuances of euphemisms. I'm not into that. Okay. You don't want to say selling passports? People give us money and we give them our passport in the exchange so that they can become citizens of St. Lucia.
Yeah.
All right. If you're happy with that, Andre, fine with me. I am asking, how many people did you issue passports to become citizens of St. Lucia, and how much money was derived from that transaction? Am I not within my right as a citizen of this country to know that? Don't you have a responsibility as the minister who serves in the portfolio responsible for the CIP program? Don't you have a responsibility to account to us? Andre, they are the ones who introduced the CIP, and they are the ones who drew up the CIP Act. So, according to the rules of the CIP, Andre.
So, educate us, Mr. Montwood.
Yeah.
Is it the minister that has that responsibility, or the office, the CIP?
Well, he can have his office do it, he can have his officials do it, but the buck stops with him. As a matter of fact, the laws governing the CIP, laws, you know what I said? Laws passed in Parliament by the St. Lucia Labour Party says that at least once a year, okay, the minister responsible for the CIP must table a report, okay, giving us information as to what transpired in the last year with the CIP program. They have never presented a report on time. The opposition, the leader of the opposition, and the other member of the opposition, Bradley Felix, had to hound them, literally plead for them to table a report about a year late. Okay? Right now, a report is due. It has not been. Another report is due. It has not been tabled. What is it you're hiding? Why you cannot account? When you're asked by people like you, Andre, our journalists, and I keep saying, I don't have access to some officials. You all do as media people. When they call press conferences, although I must try to enter a press conference one of these days, they might tell me to qualify, you know. and you all will not back me up. You all say, well, maybe they're no journalists, you know. You ask the questions, Andre, on my behalf. Very often, Andre, you go and you ask questions that you already know the answer to, but you want to bring out the story, you want to bring out the message to the general public. So when a media person asks you how many citizenships were approved, they call it files, they call it whatever they want to call it, how many were approved, you're telling them you cannot tell them, okay? You have to get permission Andre, that's so laughable that it's not even ridiculous anymore, you know. You have to get permission from the foreigner that you gave our citizenship to ask them if you can tell us what is the situation with our patrimony. I mean, really? You ever hear more? And you talk about sellout? You talk about people abdicating their responsibilities and handing it over to foreigners and people we don't even know? You know, that is what Ernest Hiller did. When we ask questions about the ports, what deal went into GPH? You that is in the media, reading news every day, you don't know. Okay? The opposition keeps asking the question daily. Present us with the details on the deal that you went into. You have not done it, you cannot do it. Luke Stevenson King went into another deal, a secret deal. And out of the blue, all of a sudden, because an election is coming, we're hearing a fait accompli deal was made in Leclerc, where you come from, Andre. Okay? To utilize the CDC lands for some big investor to develop.
Well, the minister said it's actually a proposal.
Yeah?
No decision has been taken.
He also said it's an agreement.
Well, I heard him say it's a proposal.
I heard him say it's an agreement. Well, we'll play the tape in a while. And we will hear him say both. You know? At the end of the day, you don't get to that point without consultation with the people that are going to be directly affected by the project. That is one of the biggest breaches of the St. Lucia Labour Party, the way they treat St. Lucian with scorn and disdain, the way they feel that they are not answerable to us, and that they can do what they want and abuse their powers as they please and do what they want with the assets of this state. That is wrong. That is dictatorship. That's not democracy. So to finish the story, before we move on, because we're going into other areas already, Andre, which we have to go into. So, apart from the CIP story that we're talking about there, that's still hovering over Ernest Hiller's head with so many unanswered questions, apart from the charge that was laid against him for assaulting a media worker, that still hovers over his head, so too is the Rovergate scandal, which is unresolved and questions abound as far as that is concerned. Okay? So, about our system of justice, it seems that there is a system of justice in St. Lucia for those who hold high office, those who are high in society, and those who are high. Okay? So I want to say that apart from those who are high in society, those who hold high office, there's a special justice for those who are high in their minds, okay, in their mind-altering effects of power. Those who are high on power are also abusing our justice system and abusing their positions. So don't come and talk to me about vindication, Andre. To vindicate, as I said before, is to clear someone of blame or suspicion. No one has cleared Ernest Hiller of any blame or any suspicion. He remains a character who is subject to high public suspicion. End of story. When we open the lines, those of you who have your views on that matter, you can come with it. Because at the end of the day, you know, I do not believe that we should just sit idly by and allow those things to happen. Maybe we don't realize it, but our democracy is slowly being eroded right before our very eyes. And before we know it, we St. Lucians will have no say in the decisions that affect us now and in the future. And before we know it, there will be so much power in the hands of those who hold office that they could do whatever they want, whatever they please. And as we are already seeing, what they are doing is for their own personal aggrandizement, for their own enrichment, and for the benefit of foreigners. So, ladies and gentlemen, another case, Andre, another case. Before I go into this other case, and I know you're interested in that case, you come from Leclerc. Before I go into that case, Andre, I want to ask you a question. The case we're talking about, I know you have an idea, but I want to make it clear to our listeners and viewers. The case we're talking about is to determine, okay, whether whether king is a liar or the prime minister is a liar. So at the end of the discussion, Andre, you could be the judge, the public could be the judge as to who is the king. Whether king is the liar or Philip Pierre is the king liar. Here we have a situation which we knew nothing about, and the prime minister is claiming that he knew nothing about. Andre, I sent you a clip. Maybe we should start by playing it so that the people can hear. Because see, when I stay here and I say things, the way I get that from and so on, we can hear in their own voices what the situation actually is. So when you play the clip, you'll hear Philip Pierre denying that he knows anything, and you'll hear what Stephen King himself said, and then we'll discuss it.
Prime Minister Philip J. Pierre says that there is no deal for the town centre at Leclerc, where the old CDC buildings once stood. This comes after the infrastructure minister stated that he and Pierre met an African investor who is a shareholder with the African Export-Import Bank that would be investing in a town centre at Leclerc.
There is no investment deal for Leclerc. That's another thing that I hear. Probably it's in another cabinet. I don't know about no investment deal. I don't know about that. You know, sometimes it fascinates me when I hear people talk about investment deals. It's about, I mean, every day people get requests. Every day there are requests for people to invest in St. Lucia. Every day. We have too many.
The statement seemingly contradicts the announcement made by Infrastructure Minister Stephen King on Friday, October 3rd, during the Meet the Minister program on Rev-Up St. Lucia.
He was so excited by the proposal that he visited St. Lucia soon after, visited the site, saw what we've got there, and have agreed to proceed with the investment. However, as a responsible government, we have the necessary due diligence to perform, notwithstanding the fact that he's a member of the Afrik-Exim Bank. We have to perform the due diligence. He has to be written to, which we have already done. He has responded rather to us, and we are now in the position of engaging him fully into discussion because of the range of services that he's talking about.
Pierre says that the project with the investor has not been finalized. For the DBS News World, Miriam Montoot reporting.
Yes, St. Lucia. Confusion. Yes, confusion. What obtains in St. Lucia, what prevails here in St. Lucia with a government called the St. Lucia Labour Party.
I'm curious to hear the confusion.
The confusion is that the Prime Minister of St. Lucia, the Prime Minister is the head of the cabinet, is the minister who presides over all other ministers, said in this clip that he knows nothing about any investment deal, okay, that it must have taken place in another cabinet, not his. That's what he said. What was he talking about? He was talking about, okay, the fact that King came to us telling us how he struck a deal with a foreign investor who was so excited by the proposal that he visited St. Lucia soon after to see the site. Okay? He visited the site, saw the site, and what we have, and he has agreed to proceed with the investment. The words of Stephen King. I actually wrote those words down. The words of Stephen King. So how do you juxtapose what Stephen King is saying against what the Prime Minister said, that he knows nothing about any investment deal? You know, the Prime Minister said, people are talking about investment deal. People are talking about it? Who's talking about it, Andre? Stephen King is talking about it. Who is Stephen King? A member of your cabinet. Okay, so it's not people. Okay, let's get it right. Let's get it straight. Now, the problem I have is that the Prime Minister is so notorious a liar that I do not know who to believe. Andre, whenever I hear two stories about the same situation, I know two things. One person is lying or both people are lying. That's for sure. Okay? So, do we have any truth in what we're discussing here right now? How do we determine who is telling the truth, if anyone is telling the truth? Now, when I say the Prime Minister is so notorious of telling lies, people take offense to these things because that's not politically correct language. But you notice, listeners, Andre didn't say anything to me. He knows what I'm talking about. Andre has had first-hand experience of the Prime Minister being a notorious liar. Andre has sat in front of the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister told Andre he never promised anybody $1,500. The Prime Minister sat in front of Andre and said that he never told anybody it's not their business. You, Andre, and I all know those were blatant lies, provable lies. I'll not go to the many other examples that I know you and Andre know of, but we know the Prime Minister is fond of lying, and the Prime Minister does not level with St. Lucians. He prefers instead to be dishonest and deceitful, and we do not know in this case whether or not he's telling the truth, and that is what happens when you are a liar. People do not know when to believe you. So, since we cannot believe the Prime Minister, do we believe Stephenson King? If we believe Stephenson King, how appropriate was that move by Stephenson King without consultation with Andre and them? By that I mean the people of the Cleary, the people of the constituency of Castries North, to take such a decision in their name, on their behalf, with their assets, and engage a foreigner. The same foreigners you all criticize and complained about and lambaste the United Workers' Party about. You all have done it with GPH. You all have done it with CIP. You all are now doing it with the Cleary lands. Ladies and gentlemen, in case you're wondering what I'm talking about where the CDCs used to be in the Clearys. The CDCs were housing projects set up by government, the United Workers' Party, by the way, to provide housing for ordinary St. Lucians. Well, granted, those buildings had probably outlived their usefulness. They were becoming dilapidated and unsightly and so on and unsafe. They were demolished, they were torn down, with the understanding that new arrangements will be put in place to rehouse those who were displaced by that decision. Stephenson King, mind you, has been the parliamentary representative of that area for most of the time that we are talking about when all of this is going on. Stephenson King, you would have thought, would engage in some housing development project for the people, some of whom still remain displaced from the breaking down of those CDC buildings, to provide affordable, proper housing for them, given the fact that his second, Richard Frederick, is Minister of Housing, and the man who say he's proud of him, Philip J. Pierre, is the Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, that he would have put in place something for the people of his constituency, the people of the Leclerc area, especially those who were displaced. But no, there is no great benefit in that for them. Where the benefit comes is where they can make deals with foreigners unknown to St. Lucians, and they, by the way, mind you, make a point about not providing any details on the deals that they make. Talk to Emma Hippolyte. She will tell you about secret deals and she will not give you any details. Talk to Philip J. Pierre. He will tell you straight in, not answering questions, so don't ask him about those things. Okay? And if you pursue any further, he'll tell you it's not your business. Okay? Talk to Ernest Hilaire. He'll tell you he needs permission from foreigners to provide you with answers. That is the government that you have today. That is the government that presides over the affairs of our country, the running of our affairs in this country, and presiding over the handling of our assets in this country. We have already given one of our prime assets away for the next 30 to 40 years to DSH, our ports, both in Castries and Soufrière, and put Vieux-Fort in limbo where nothing can be done if DCH decides that nothing is going to be done. Okay?
Can you repeat the quote there by Mr. King? Because you said you were quoting him. Okay. Can you repeat what he said?
Mr. King said that the investor was so excited by the proposal that he visited St. Lucia soon after. He visited the site, saw what we have and have agreed to proceed with the investment.
Mhm.
Stevenson King, talking about some African investor.
But don't you think he's saying that's what the African investor is saying, that he is proceeding, or maybe he would like to proceed with the investment?
He agreed to proceed with it. Now, okay.
Because that's not Mr. King saying so, huh?
No, that's not
he's
Mr. King.
saying
So
what
he's
the...
saying that the African is
Right,
saying so, but I'm
right.
saying to you,
Mm.
how do you get to that point before you consult with the people who are going to be directly affected by that decision? How? How do you get to that point?
But he's...
How do you get to that point with your prime minister saying he knows nothing about that? You're talking about site visit and all of that, that's advanced negotiations. How does a minister of government, a parliamentary representative, get to that point with state assets where the prime minister, the man heading the government of this country, knows nothing about that according to him? Because, what I'm saying, they say normally when liars talk to you, you have to take a grain of salt. When Philip here talk to you, you have a bag of salt you need,
Don't you think the prime minister is saying, I don't know anything about this, meaning whoever asked him the question was assuming or presuming that a deal had been struck. So he's saying, I don't know anything about any deal.
He went further to say, people are talking about investment. What are they talking about? No, it was not people, it was King. Huh? Now, when you say that, people are talking, every day we get requests and so on. But we're talking about something that reached the stage of proposal, site visits done, agreements being arrived at, and all of that. That advanced negotiation on that matter. Okay? That means there are plans in place and all of those things. That you're already bringing people to see the site and agreements being arrived at and so on. Andre, that is advanced. And if the Prime Minister does not know that, we have a problem in this country.
Well, I heard Mr. King use the word discussions. You said you heard agreement?
You can play the clip again, Andre, you have it?
I think we probably need to play it again because...
When he says it.
Prime Minister Philip J. Pierre says that there is no deal for the town centre at Leclerc, where the old CDC buildings once stood. This comes after the infrastructure minister stated that he and Pierre met an African investor who is a shareholder with the African Export-Import Bank that would be investing in a town centre at Leclerc.
There is no investment deal, but okay. That's another thing that I hear. Probably it's in another cabinet. I don't know about no investment deal. I don't know about something. It fascinates me when I hear people talk about investment deals. It's about every day people get requests. Every day there are requests for people to invest in St. Lucia. Every day we have too many.
The statement seemingly contradicts the announcement made by Infrastructure Minister Stevenson King on Friday, October 3rd, during the Meet the Minister program on Rev-Up St. Lucia.
He was so excited by the proposal that he visited St. Lucia. Soon after, visited the site, saw what we've got there, and have agreed to proceed with the investment. However, as a responsible government, we have the necessary due diligence to perform, notwithstanding the fact that he's a member of the Afrexim Bank. We have to perform the due diligence. He has to be written to, which we have already done. He has responded rather to us, and we are now in the position of engaging him fully into discussion because of the range of services that he's talking about.
Pierre says that the project with the investor has not been finalized.
Right?
Sorry.
You would agree.
Yes.
And
yes.
you see how advanced this thing is?
But again, I'm hearing him saying that that's the investor has agreed to proceed. He's not saying, because he said, however, he was very careful. Mm-hmm. He said, however, we have due diligence and so on.
Due diligence.
Right, that's what he's saying.
Yes.
So really and truly, it's the investor making that statement.
Yeah. Yes, the investor that is saying that says.
So what's
the investor? He's saying that has agreed. So you have gone into negotiations with the investor, and towards the end, he's saying that they're in discussions because of the range of investments that I think. So what I'm saying to you, how do you get to that point, that advanced position, without any consultation with your constituents who are going to be directly impacted by that decision? And how do you get to that point without your cabinet because it did not take place in that cabinet, according to Pip. It's in some other cabinet. And how do you get to the point without the Prime Minister of the country knowing about it? How? Andre, you're watching me as if I know who's lying. I don't know. You know? I don't know. Now, you know what confuses you? You don't know whose word to take. Now,
I think,
why is it that Andre Paul should find himself in a position today when honorable men speak and he cannot take their word at its face value? Why? You know, they have lied to him so much, boldface in front of him, that is why. So you're asking me questions now. Andre, we are in a bad situation in this country. And I want St. Lucians to take stock of what's going on. And if this continues, if these guys win another term, people, it will only go from bad to worst. It will go from bad to worst. And you're talking about people, men who lack integrity, who do things like that. Men of questionable character do things like that. Men who are shameless do things like that. People with dictatorial tendencies do things like that. You know? Now, you know what? I mean, and those words that I quoted there, they were said in front of you, Andre, right here on the program that takes place on a Friday. Now, you know what problem I have? Do your thing, say your thing. When you're exposed, when you're caught, and I know how embarrassing it must have been for Steve, for the Prime Minister, I say Stephen King, because we have a Steve every year. They are a totally different kettle of fish. We can't put them in the same bracket or category, so you have to make the distinction. But when you are embarrassed, when you are exposed like Stephen King was by his Prime Minister, whoever is telling the truth, I understand the bad feeling, but don't try to cover it up by coming and dropping other people into your nonsense. Of course, Alan Chastney, the favorite whipping boy, he jumped on Alan and so on, going yard and talking nonsense about Alan Chastney, and then of course Guy. I don't know which one between Guy and Alan, which one they liked, most. In making allegations, casting assertions, and attacking them. But then, the man put me in his thing too. Now, Andre, Stephen King said that in speaking to Alan Chastney, because the same old story from 2021 is back again, how badly he was treated. Poor Stephen King, the victim. He was in the cabinet and we treated him so badly, but he stayed there for 5 years. Huh? Never once complaining, You in media, you never heard one complaint from Stephen King. Not even the day before nomination, you heard a complaint from him.
I asked him about that.
Okay.
And he said he wanted to serve out his time.
He wanted to serve out his time.
Yes.
If you are a man of character, you're a man of principle, things are not going right, you speak up about it if it was as bad as you claim it to be. You say something. You don't wait until you serve out your time. Let me just correct you, Andre, and correct him. He didn't serve out his time. He took advantage of the full extent of the salaries that he could have collected, okay, waited until the call election and then made his move. Because if he had resigned, he would no longer be a minister, drawing the salary of a minister. That's what unprincipled people do, okay? Now, I was saying to you, the man said he went to speak to, explain how he ended up getting Ministry of Infrastructure under the Alan Chastney administration. He went to speak to Alan Chastney, and Alan Chastney told him that he wouldn't give Guy Joseph Ministry of Infrastructure because people don't trust Guy. Now, I don't have to tell you that that's a lie. At the time, Alan Chastney and Stephen King, I know, did not have the closest of relationships. At the time, Alan Chastney and Guy, I know, had the closest of relationships. Alan Chastney will malpale Guy with Stephen King. Really, King? You see, when you're lying, that's the other thing. You see, there are two things that bug me. One, the fact that you're going to lie to me. And two, the fact that you're going to insult my intelligence with the foolish lies that you come with. That lie doesn't even have any intelligence based. And I mean, when you tell an obvious lie, you don't even have to think to know that that is a lie. And that's insulting, And that's another thing that St. Lucians should take into account, the extent to which those people insult you and the lack of regard for your intelligence that they have. So he said that. And then he said the other person who wanted the Ministry of Infrastructure was Leonard Spider Montoot, but Spider is greedy. Now, let me just tell you something. I know Chastney as well as Stephen King, or better than Stephen King. Alan Chastney and I have had our exchanges. The Alan Chastney I knew, if he ever thought that about me, I would have known that coming from him. He is the kind of fellow who would tell me that. Just like he knows, I will tell him what I think. And that, I want to put on record, is one of the reasons why I highly respect Alan Chastney. Unlike Stephenson King, who will smile to your face, make you believe what you want to hear. And as soon as you turn your back, it's a different story. Stephenson King never says no to anyone, but hardly ever keeps his promise to anyone. That is the lack of character of this man. Let me tell you what kind of leader Stephenson King is. A leader of deals, and I will elaborate on that. Stephenson King is the kind of leader, I've said it before and I'm going to repeat it again, who has no vision, is not proactive, does not take decisions, who sits and waits and allows things to happen. It has worked for him, but that will not work for this country. Let me explain to you. Analogy again. I know you don't like my analogies, Andre, but I'm going to get to you. If you have some guys looking at a coconut tree, a tall coconut tree, with nice jelly coconuts, and they want to pick the coconuts. Andre, you look like the kind of fellow that'll take stones and try and pick a coconut with a stone. I don't know. It's possible, but difficult. I now, having played cricket and do everything like that, my shoulder's not 100% anymore. I'll not try to take a stone. I'll use those long sticks, what we call in Creole a gullet, and try to juke the coconut to pick a coconut. Some other younger fella, Andre, will come, climb the coconut tree, and pick the coconut. You know what Stephenson King will do? Sit under the coconut tree and hope that the coconut falls. You know, that is the kind of leader you have, but it has worked for him. And this is a guy who believes in deals. Now, I am going way back, and because you see, I'm not just attacking him, he brought me into the conversation, so I am going to clear my name. To talk about me being greedy, I want to go back and delve a little into my political history to St. Lucians. When I got into politics, contested in 2001, the UWP was at its lowest ebb. They had just come from I don't know how you want to describe it, but a spanking defeat of 16-1. Almost, some people say to me, almost 17-1. Louis George survived by the skin of his teeth. Okay? The party was in the doldrums. Some, like in Creole, they say, the party a tient les dents. Somebody told me, no, party a tient les sensibles. That means you don't even have teeth. Okay? That is how bad it was when I came into politics. I'm no opportunist. The opportunists come in when things look bright, when things look good. Like when Stephenson King became a candidate. UWP was in government, Compton and the Flabo was flying high, he came in. When what I just described happened, UWP, I said, was in the doldrums, scraping the bottom of the barrel to even get anybody to offer themselves to be a candidate. I offered myself to be a candidate. Stephenson King was a part of the party. I'd been part of the team that was decimated in 1997. Did Stephenson King rise to the occasion, help the party, come to our assistance and be a candidate? Absolutely not. Things were not looking bright. When the going gets tough, the tough gets going. When the going is nice, the opportunists come forward. Stephenson King said no, he's not interested in contesting. A man who had experience, who had benefited from being a parliamentarian and a minister of the UWP. Now we were in dire straits. He didn't want to know, he did not contest. It was Nigel Toussaint who contested the Castries North seat for us. Fast forward, 2006, SLP losing popularity, UWP building their popularity, things looking good for UWP. We had Sybil Snack as the endorsed candidate for Castries North. Stephenson King, in all his connivance and backstabbing deals, succeeded in toppling. Now, one thing, I give him credit for that, and one thing, when you talk about wheeling and dealing, he's the master of that in St. Lucian politics. He toppled Sybil and became the candidate. Why? because the writing on the wall, a victory was looking imminent for the UWP. That is what opportunists do. That is what greedy people do. That is what self-serving people do. Okay? I was part of that team. And I must admit to you, never mind all the people who claiming that they were responsible for the victory, one of the main reasons for the victory was the return of Sir John Compton. We all knew, and the nation welcomed the return of Sir John. As a matter of fact, there was that slogan that Sir John was back by popular demand. Not because he was greedy and wanted to get back to free. He was back by popular demand. I want to tell St. Lucians, the Sir John that Steve likes to invoke nowadays and talk about the real flambeau of Sir John Compton and everything like that. People, you all don't know that. Stephenson King never supported John Compton. Never supported John Compton. At the convention that we had 2005-2006 in Soufrière, where Sir John was re-elected political leader of the party, Stephenson King opposed Sir John body and soul, tooth and nail. He supported Vaughan Lewis.
When you say oppose him, what do you mean?
When I say oppose him, campaign against him, try to prevent him from becoming political leader. That was Stephenson King. So John, the magnanimous, mature politician that he is, he won hands down, became the political leader and embraced Stephenson King. At the time, Stephenson King was party chairman. Okay? We won the election. Stephenson King was in Sir John's cabinet. But Stephenson King was the chairman of the party. Sir John was the political leader of the party. Spider Montoot and Keith Mondesi were the deputy political leaders of the party. We all know what happened. Sir John died. Okay? When Sir John passed away, what should have happened is for the party to call a national council meeting and for the national council to elect a new leader. According to the party's constitution, I'm not talking national constitution, the party's constitution, the party agrees that the leader will become the prime minister. Okay? Now, we know that the national constitution says the person who commands the support of the majority of the members becomes prime minister. But if you go according to the party constitution, it is that person will be the one commanding the support of the majority. Some people, including Stephenson King, did everything in their power, again maneuvering on in a clandestine manner, wheeling and dealing, to ensure that there was never a national council meeting. Because you know why? If there was a national council meeting, Leonard Spider Montoot, as one of the deputies, would have thrown his hat into the leadership race. And I'm not asking anybody to corroborate what I'm saying there. I'm giving you my opinion, my sentiments, my true, genuine feelings at the time. Now, I don't want to talk about now, Andre, I probably can't even win a position. At the time, nobody in that party would touch me. If you had thrown the decision out to the delegates of the party because of my popularity within the United Workers' Party then. And they knew it. But I was an outsider. I wasn't a man of the status quo. They didn't trust me. And when they trust, not because of dishonesty in terms of theft or anything like that, They didn't trust me to be someone that will connive and enter into any deals. They didn't trust me as someone who would uphold the status quo, and so. And I can elaborate on that in time to come, But Stephenson King assumed the role of prime minister by getting the support of the majority of the members of parliament to go to the Governor General and say they support him. How did that happen? Okay? At one point, I had the support of the majority of the members. I was being told by members, and let me tell you something, I call names and I speak directly. I don't know, those kind of nefarious comments, and I'm not in that. I don't know how to do that. I don't speak in parables. I don't speak in nefarious language. Buzke was out of the cabinet at the time. If I wanted his support, all I had to do is give him the assurance that he would become Minister of Foreign Affairs and Minister of Foreign Trade. Mondesi was a deputy who was bitching about the fact I hope that's not an inappropriate word to use, was bitching about the fact that as deputy, the portfolio he had was not befitting of his status and all that kind of thing. He was just Minister of Health. Okay? I could simply promise Mondesi to expand his portfolios and give him a more substantial portfolio. I could have also said to Richard Frederick, who was longing and desperate to have the Ministry of National Security, that I would have given him that ministry. I had the support of Marcus and all of those guys, and I would have won the leadership to become Prime Minister. But you know what I said to them? I am not going into any deal with anybody. If you all want to support me to be Prime Minister, you are going to have to make me be a Prime Minister with a free hand. And my exact words were, I'm not going into the Prime Minister's chair with my hand tied behind my back. Okay? So, Stephenson King got the support of the majority. He became Prime Minister. Now, the vote took place among us. Once he had the support, okay, we all agreed. We're not going to fracture the party by saying, okay, well, I'm not supporting and so on, because the government could have fallen. 3 of us had to say we're not doing it, and the government would have fallen. But we agreed, okay. Stephenson King became the Prime Minister. During the time that Stephenson King became the Prime Minister, a coup was orchestrated against Stephenson King by people like Richard, Rufus Busquet, and the likes. Okay? And they came to me to be the next Prime Minister of this country. I said to them, guys, I don't believe in those kind of moves. If we have an issue with Stephenson King, let's bring him to the table, let's put it to him, and let's make a decision there. I went to Stephenson King and I let him know what was afoot. And of course, he sprung into action and again made his deals and all that thing. All I could have done is just collect the signatures of the individuals and go to the Governor General, and I would have become Prime Minister. And there are people outside of the politics who are fully aware of the details of what I'm talking about there. So to say that I, Spider, is greedy, Stephenson King, you should never let those words come out of your mouth. I'm not an opportunist and I'm not greedy. Because if I was greedy, I would grab those opportunities. I knew what to do then. But on the grounds of principle, I decided to do what I did at the time. Okay? Fast forward. Okay? We're in an Alan Chasney administration. Before we were in an Alan Chasney administration, King was Prime Minister. We ended up losing the elections. King became leader of the opposition. As leader of the opposition, Steve did absolutely nothing. And at that time, Steve was my partner. And I can tell you, I was disappointed with the lethargy and lack of action and that kind of thing. He did nothing. That gave rise and room for people to search for another leader. There came Alan Chasney, who had contested the suffrage seat and was now in full-fledged elective politics. Alan Chasney got the support of most of us because we were satisfied that nothing wasn't happening. We needed to rebuild the party and to reposition ourselves for the next election. Okay? The same Mary Police who sits in front of you every evening and saying all what you're saying about Chasney was supporting that move. Because she too recognized that King wasn't going anywhere, wasn't doing anything. I supported it. But I supported it at the time, not that at the time I didn't see Alan Chasney as any big-time politician. I didn't think he understood the politics well enough or was seasoned enough. So I say, we'll bring Alan Chasney at this juncture, let him reorganize the party. I believe in his organizational skills. I saw him as a minister. I know of his exploits in private business, so he would reorganize the party and so on. So Alan Chasney became the leader. Now, let me just add, Alan Chasney became the leader through our democratic process. He won fair and square in an open democratic process that he, Alan Chasney, and Stephenson King subscribed to. From the time Stephenson King lost the political leadership of the party, the man became bitter. Now, any loss causes some bitterness, and I understand that. I'm not asking anybody not to be human. But he held that grudge until this day. He now started behaving in a very erratic manner and in a manner that was not in the best interest of the UWP. So much so that he seemed to have been in cohort with the SLP and engaging in decision-making with the SLP unknown to us, causing us embarrassment as leader of the opposition. So, though he was not political leader, Alan was not elected, he was elected, so he was leader of the opposition. The party took a decision after discussing those matters with him, okay, and he persisted, they removed him as leader of the opposition. Well, I don't have to tell you, that only added salt to the wound. This guy became so bitter that Moby became sweet, you know. So, at the end of the day, we're approaching an election now, so he's holding out and so on. I had my own issues as well. And let me just say to you, I don't believe in that business where in an organization everybody pretending that everything is good and things. Anywhere you have one or more than one person, there must be disagreement. Must. And Andre, you can tell me about your wife, your mother, your sister, your brother. Where there are more than one person, there will be disagreement. If there isn't disagreement, watch yourself. There's a problem. There's hypocrisy, there's viciousness, that's what there is. So the little disagreements, I mean, like people talk about, I mean, the Labour Party have the disagreement, that's understood, that's expected. But the man held out until the end, he came on board until the end. We won the election, he became a minister. And I don't care if Alan Chasney don't want me to say that, Alan Chasney treated King with preferential treatment. If Guy is honest, if Herman Gill is honest, if Dominic is honest, Herod is honest, all of those Fortuna, all of them who are in cabinet are honest, they will tell you Alan Chasney gave Stephenson King preferential treatment. Why? He felt the man had been prime minister. He needed to treat him with a higher level of respect and dignity, and so on. He consulted with him on almost everything. He involved him in almost everything. Okay? Now, I must tell you, I saw myself as a senior member of the party too, but Steve was more senior than I was, and I was never prime minister. So he accorded Steve that extra respect, okay, that the rest of us, well, he respected all of us, but Steve was in a category of his own by himself. Steve literally got what he wanted. When I was arguing, making cases and putting forward points for me to get my roads or other projects done, Steve Owen would be done. And that is a fact. Okay? But Steve kept harboring ill feelings throughout. And we are suspicious of a lot of things that have happened. I know some of it happened. I cannot substantiate it, so I will not repeat it. But Steve remained bitter throughout because, one, he lost the leadership. Two, he was no longer prime minister. And let me just say something to you. Andre, whether it be in relationship with a lady or what have you, the fact that you have tasted the honey, whenever it is taken away from you, doesn't matter what else you get, it is bitter, it's the sweet of the honey you're craving. And so Steve never got over the fact that Alan Chasney defeated him as political leader, and Alan Chasney became the prime minister. He was not the prime minister. He never got over that. So he stayed in cabinet, behaved in certain manners that were, suspicious, to say the least, and he waited till the end to do what he did. Now let me just tell you about the end now, because I don't want to go into all the details, but let me just tell you about the end. I'm going back to being greedy. I will say today that I, Leonard Spider Montoot, was made not the same, but a similar offer to what Stephenson King was made, to leave the United Workers' Party, to run as an independent or to join the Labour Party. Okay? Now, I want to be clear, because people will tell you, Philip J. Pierre will tell you, he never spoke to me. No, they didn't, but they had the surrogates to do it. Okay? I was offered $2 million to do it. Okay? I know how much Steve was offered. Okay? Of course, he was offered more than I was offered. Okay? If I was greedy, I could not make $2 million in 5 years, even as a minister of government. I would have taken it. I stood by principle. I do not believe in the policies and the approach of the St. Lucia Labour Party. I defended the UWP for 5 years, and I still believe in the policies and the principles of the United Workers' Party. So even when I knew back then already that I did not intend, after this last election, contesting another election, I could have taken my money and run. I said, I'm not for sale. I'm not going to compromise my principles, and I'm not going to be bought. And I'm going to make a statement here today. Any man that can be bought, okay? Any man that can be bought does not have value. I think that's enough that I've said so far. Okay? And so, I just want to say to King, be very careful when you're speaking. If you're making reference to me, be careful what you say. Because like I said to Richard Frederick, I'm going to say to King now, I know too much about you all. I know too much about you all for you to try to drag me in any discussion that is unsavory or unfavorable that might offend me. Don't do it. And so, I want to further say, these are not the days when people said what they wanted about me, and I figure, boy, that's not true, and no, I will respond. If you're going to say anything about me, be prepared for my response. Okay? And so, this is a king who stabbed the Comptons in the back. I mean, I don't want to go into all the details, you know. This is a Stevenson king that was made by the UWP. Made. And people don't want you to say it. Like Rufus Bousquet said, the UWP took me from being a masseuse to being a minister. Of course, I was more than a masseuse. But even if I was just a masseuse, I am proud of that. And that makes a statement about the UWP that is a party that gives opportunities irrespective of your station in life. We know Stevenson King was a messenger boy at a legal firm, and the UWP took him, grew him, and made him a politician who rose to the point of becoming the prime minister of this country. That is a remarkable story. That is a great achievement, and that says a lot about the party that I am a part of. Okay? However, for that same individual, when called upon or is needed by the party to stand up for the party, if it is not in his personal best interest, he does not respond like he did in 2001. The very people who made him, like I told you, did not support Compton in 2005, 2006 to become the leader. When Sir John died, his daughter contested the seat in Miku in a by-election, okay, and won. He refused to bring her into the cabinet. Okay, he refused to bring her into the cabinet. So, when talking about loyalty or you know, that kind of thing, this is the guy we're talking about. I'm just saying those things for St. Lucians to ask themselves questions, you know, and to get to know the characters who present themselves for public office in St. Lucia, who they really are. Okay? So,
are you taking calls today?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
So, Andre, I before we open the line, or while we're opening the line, I just want to touch on another thing. You know, I heard Mary Polius and my good friend Paul Alcindor sat here yesterday, and of course trying to defend Stevenson King. They know different, they know better, and if they continue with that, I say to people sometimes what I heard, a quote that I heard from someone else: if you just stop telling lies, I'll tell the truth. You know, and the truth is there to be told. And I'm just beginning. I'm just warming up, because St. Lucians, y'all do not know, y'all do not understand. I know a lot. I have been well placed to know a lot. And I will tell the truth when you're being bombarded with lies. And so when Mary Polius says that Alan Chasney is so heartless and whatever, that, I mean, she spoke Creole, so I'm not quoting her, but I'm just giving this. And you were there, so you'll know if I'm saying anything that she didn't say. In effect, that Alan Chasney don't care about poor people and so on, that he removed the distress fund to prevent people from getting a little assistance if the house got burnt or anything like that. Now, Mary Polius knows better, and she knows differently. Now, the distress fund was a head that they have, you know, in budget, they have whatever fund, they have whatever, you know. So the distress fund was a head where they put some money, okay? The Labour Party would have about $700,000 in the distress fund. If your house got burned, they would first send someone to make an assessment, you get a fire report, and they give you some assistance. We did not have a head called the distress fund, and this is not the first time I'm explaining that. And that is the problem with those people. They know the truth. And if they did not know the truth has been revealed, so they know differently, they know better. And what I'm saying can be verified, it can be substantiated. There was no head in the budget called the Distress Fund. However, the United Workers' Party under Alan Chasney reviewed that whole distress fund and said, that $700,000, first of all, is not enough. Because, Andre, if you have 3 houses that are seriously damaged, even if it's plywood houses, you're talking change now. And he said, fires were not the only form of distress that people suffered, nor natural disasters. So he looked at distress as natural disasters, fires, health situations where I am sick, I don't have the money, my family don't have the money, I need to go for emergency surgery and so on. You need help. People come to government for that. So Alan Chasney placed under the Ministry of Health over $4 million to provide assistance to St. Lucians for health care, especially overseas treatment. Okay? In the 5 years, over $4 million was spent. In addition to that...
So, in other words, he made the distress fund much more effective.
Yeah, he didn't call it a distress fund. Because, Andre, it's not about nomenclature. It's not about, jazzy titles and so on. What we're interested in is the program and its effectiveness and its impact. So, did people get assistance? Yes, more than what they got before. So, in the Prime Minister's office now, he had funds that came from the Prime Minister's office to assist people with fires, people who suffered damage from natural disasters, and other injuries. We spent in excess of $6 million in providing assistance to people who were in distress, as compared to the $700,000 that the Labour Party spent assisting people who were in distress. So, what are you interested in? Having something called a distress fund, or having funds made available to people who are in distress? So stop it. Stop it. Because if you are talking about a person who have a heart for poor people, if you're talking about a person who cares, Alan Chasney demonstrated in a tangible way that he cares. The United Workers' Party cared, and that is why we provided a wider range of assistance and a far larger quantum in terms of dollars and cents to people who needed assistance for any kind of distress they suffered.
So did this new arrangement, the $4 million, come under some other some other name?
So it was, for example, the Ministry of Health got an allocation. So when you come...
But it wasn't called the distress fund at that point?
No, it wasn't called the distress fund.
Okay.
Now, I can say those things and I can say it loud because as Minister of Social Services, I too enjoyed having some funds in my ministry were for us to assist people. I did some of it through the SSDF, and I sent people there. However, I saw more people than the other ministers because, when people in problems, poor people, that's one ministry they know, Ministry of Social Service. So they come to me, and we would, if it's a health issue, we would redirect them to the Ministry of Health, or I would make representation to the Prime Minister's office if I figure, boy, that's above our pay grade, that kind of money they need, we don't have it. Address it in cabinet so that the Prime Minister's office can take care of it. I can tell you that. So stop the lies. If you all didn't know better and you all were misled, you all know better now. Stop it. You all have been saying that for a long time now. You all can fool some of the people some of the time. You all cannot fool the people all the time. Stop trying to fool people all of the time. Okay? That is how you all got elected. It will not happen again.
Well, now that you're talking about it, I think you also need to clear the air on the Julian Alfred stipend, because I think they also said that this was stopped.
Yes, and they keep repeating it too. The Julian, you have to continue to debunk it because they continue to repeat it. Julian Alfred was receiving a stipend from the Ministry of Sports. When Edmund Estefan and the UWP got into office, Edmund Estefan was the Minister of Sports, they were carrying out a review. Because the previous administration under Sean Edward, there was some contention about how the funds were being managed and handled, where funds were being in what we call a minister's account and all of that kind of thing. While that review was going on, the National Lottery, was put, the operations of the National Lottery was kind of put on hold while all the audit and everything was being done. So the Olympic Committee was asked to pick up the slack and provide Julian Alfred with assistance. Now,
so it was never stopped.
It was never stopped. And when it was resumed, I don't want to give false figures. Had I known you would ask me that question, I would have exact figures for you. Next time I come here, I'm giving you the exact figures. As a matter of fact, let me make a note because I usually forget those things. You know, when we resumed, I don't want to give figures, but if they were giving $1 EC, we gave $1 US. Let's just put it this way. In other words, she benefited much more. In addition to the assistance Junior and Alfred got from government, I hear political parties, let me not speak in nebulous terms, I heard the St. Lucia Labour Party claiming that they made Junior and Alfred is the product of the SLP. I mean, you know, and even now, Junior and Alfred was dressed in a red dress and, you know, Junior and Alfred knew look good. You don't do that. This is a national hero. Andre, we are getting to the point where it's very rare and scarce to have a unifying force or element in St. Lucia today. Julian Alfred is one such unifying force. Do not politicize Julian Alfred in the way that you're doing, you know. She is a national hero. Let her be all of our hero. Do not claim it for a political party. That is wrong. That is on principle, you know, and that is low, you know. Anyway.
So just to be sure, the stipend that Julian was receiving was quote-unquote stopped for a while.
It was not stopped.
It was never stopped.
No. Another agency took over for a little while.
Right. So between that little while,
she continued to get it.
Oh, she continued getting whatever stipend she was getting.
Right.
So when the Olympic...
And when we resumed, we figured, boy, what is this? That is totally insufficient and insignificant. We need to increase it, and it was increased. And I will get the actual increase for you. And let me just say something. Again, I know Alan Chasney will not like what I'm about to say. Okay? Because I tried to ask him on a few occasions, and he refused to talk about it. That's him. And the fact that he's not the one who told me, I don't owe it to him to say, well, I'm breaching any confidence. I'm not breaching any confidence. That information I'm divulging there, I got that information on my own. Like I said, I'm not breaching confidence between Alan Chasney and myself. I know Alan Chasney, the individual, how much he has assisted Julian Alfred. I know. And I'm not going to go into detail out of respect for Julian Alfred. Okay? When Julian Alfred was caught in the States during COVID, schools closed and everything. When they say school closed, I mean you have to get out, you know. But get out to go where? St. Lucia is her home. No plane or traveling. Arrangements, all I will say, and maybe Alan Chasney vexed already, but all I will say for now is that arrangements were made in the United States for her to be taken care of, to get accommodation, and to be cared for. That is all I will say. Okay? Even me, I have checks on myself too, you know. I'm not going to say anymore. So you see, I heard those people lambasting people, criticizing them, calling them names, telling lies about them. It hurts, you know.
But before you take your calls, I'm just curious. When you hear those things, right?
Yeah.
Say, for example, on Meet the Minister or Power Politic and so on, because obviously you're listening. I'm curious.
I don't always listen. Sometimes it's brought to my attention.
Okay. Well, I hope they tell you the truth.
Yeah. No, I mean, when you tell me what you tell me, Andre, I will take your word. That's me. I don't repeat things people tell me just so. I go and I listen.
Okay.
Andre actually said that, then I will comment on it.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I'm a little busy. I can monitor every talk show and that kind of thing, but apart sometimes I listen, you know. But I think they should stop the lies, because you see, that is a telling factor. The fact that they have to depend on lies and deceit to impress the electorate for them to get another term in office. After 4.5 years, you should be able to stand on your record. Tell them what you're going to do for them, and to further augment that, tell them what you will do for them. And that is why the UWP will come and tell you what they have done. And I like to quote a friend of mine, an old gentleman, who used to say to me, what one has done, one can do. They have the track record. And they put out the seven from heaven. That's the 7 SOS, 7 policies to save our St. Lucia. Plus the other policies that they have put in place that touches on health, touches on security, touches on cost of living, you know. What else? The farmers, agriculture, and so on. These are the things we want to hear. These are the things that will change our lives. These are the things that will make St. Lucia a better place. And so UWP now can stand on its record of performance and its plans and policies going forward to say to St. Lucia that we will be a better government, we will bring you a better quality of life, and we will further enhance the progress and development of this country. The SLP cannot do that. First of all, they don't have plans, so if you don't have plans, you can't advance plans. They don't have vision, they don't have policies, they do not have a record that is impressive to stand on. A government that believes solely in handouts, and when I translate that, it means in buying people's votes, is a government that has no vision, no plans, no policies to sell to the people. And that is where they are going to fail in the next general election. Andre, open the lines.
Unfortunately, we have to end.
Oh, we have to end. Okay,
Sorry, we have to end because we have a program coming up next.
I didn't realize I had so much to say that we could go the whole program. But let me just say, Andre, I want to thank you because, again, you forced me to clarify certain things. And it's not even for you, It is for the benefit of my listeners to get the point clearer. And I'm hoping that they got the point clearer. And at the end of the day, we're going to continue to debunk the lies, the deceit, the dishonesty of the St. Lucia Labour Party and all their surrogates and mouthpieces who continue to repeat them. I want to thank all of you tuned in today and listened to us. I want to thank you as always, Andre. And of course, I can't say I'll thank our callers we didn't have. But I want to thank those of you in the diaspora who continue to listen to this program. And let me say, have a great weekend. And if you want that weekend to be even better, you can join us on Sunday. We are having our Sunday Live in the constituency of Canris, but before that, from 1 o'clock, we have a massive motorcade with Senator Dominic Fede, and you can come there, join the motorcade, then come to the meeting where you will be enlightened even further and brought hope as to a brighter future for this country. I want to thank you, and again, have a good weekend.
Thank you, Mr. Matut. We're wishing you a great weekend. You've been listening to and viewing Meet the Opposition with Leonard Spider-Man Toot. Join him again next week, Thursday, same time from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Well, this is the end of my stint here on Rev-Up for today, Thursday. Today is the 16th of October. Thanks for listening. You can join me again tomorrow morning, God willing, same time from 5 o'clock for another Wake Up and Live. Up next, we have the healing process that's coming up at 11:30. Pastor Phil Leon with his wife Clarissa Leon. That's coming up at 11:30 this morning, the healing process. So Kina will be with you until 3 this afternoon, then from 3 until 5, Zen the DJ, and from 5 until 6, Powell Politic with Mary Polio. So do enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Andre Paul saying, so long.